Welcome back to episode 6 of SC Academy for season 2025. Today we'll be reviewing what turned out to be a very wet round 4 as previewing round 5. There is quite a bit of carnage across the grounds this week, none bigger than the loss of Turbo. Who are you bringing in to replace him? I've managed to be pretty lucky this week with Turbo, my only player, going down, but after a disappointing week last week, I will be boosting and aggressively trading for points this week. Let's have a look at last week's results. Very disappointing week for me last week. It saw me catch my first red arrows of the year. I slipped from the top 2% down to the top 5%. The week started alright actually, and I was in pretty high spirits after playing White for his 77 and Shibasaki for his 116. But then Sunday came and absolutely smacked me in the face. Not only did I captain Turbo for his 24 and he left the field at halftime, but I missed the late news of Adam Dewey going down in the warm-up. Not only leaving him sitting in my side, but I also had a perfectly fit Luke Metcalf sitting there in my reserve, so I could have switched over. But not all doom and gloom. I didn't expect much of a score this week, given I had no Ponga, Marzu or Cleary, and they're all back on deck this week, and I'm stoked for not trading out Ponga like a lot of Supercoaches did last week as a path to Pappenhausen, especially now that Turbo's gone down. But enough about me. We'll move on to last week's matches. Just noting, if you are a audio listener, I did score a 1046 this week. So yeah, as I mentioned, slipped from the top 2% down to the top 5%. My season rank went down 4,769 spots, and my season rank is now 8,524 out of the 161,000 teams. First game of the round, Rabbitohs versus Panthers. I made a Facebook post at halftime at this game. My post was, I think, word for word. I said, is this real life? Can somebody please tune into Fox Sports or Channel 9 and please tell me they are watching the same game as me? Rabbitohs up 28-0 at halftime, just embarrassing the Panthers. But Panthers with a late surge coming back into the game, leaving South scoreless in the second half. But Rabbitohs come away with the win 28-18. Top scorers Cole with 105, Kaloa Matangi with an 85, and Liam Martin with a 76. Just quietly, if I had to pick a best on ground for Penrith, it was definitely Liam Martin. Even in that first half, it still seemed like he was putting in the work. One of the worst games I've ever seen Isaiah Yeo play. Just so many forward passes and errors, and I mean, it was all over the park for Penrith. But if you had to pick out one guy who should have probably stepped up, with Cleary and Edwards being out, although not being a spine player himself, he plays that ball playing 13 role and is almost ends up being a spine player for the Panthers. And yeah, it was really, really disappointing. A couple of notable scores. Jenkins with a 69 becomes pretty much a must-have this week, and Mamazelis with a 64. Low light, Jamie Humphries. It was a bit of a low light with a 36, considering that he had the goal kicking and South scored 28 points. His BE is 21. Latrell's coming back this week. Latrell probably takes over the goal kicking. With a BE of 21, you can probably afford to hold him this week. Whether or not you play him against the Roosters, if I was an owner, I mean, it's hard to say not knowing these squads that own Humphries and what their other options could be. I would probably lean towards playing him, but I'd be pretty nervous about that goal kicking. I think that Humphries probably becomes a trade next week. So yeah, one to watch there. Couple of notes. Penrith leaking points again. That's their third loss on the bounce. They were sloppy with poor discipline. Did have the second half bounce back, but unfortunately for them, Brian To'o went down with 10 minutes to go. He suffered a hamstring injury. He's expected to be back in round 9. Alex Johnston, also worth noting, he had an injury within like the first 10 minutes after scoring a try. It's supposed to be a pretty short-term injury. I expect to miss 1 or 2 weeks. And Scott Sorensen also suffered a head knock real early in this game as well, so he will be out this week with the 11-day stand-down period. Moving on to Roosters versus Titans. Roosters 12, Titans 30. Top scorers, James Tedesco 83, Angus Crichton 78, and Tino with a 77. Also with a 77, we had Naf White, Jaden Campbell with a 63, and Sandon Smith with a 57. No real lowlights of Supercoach relevance, nothing really here to touch on. But lowlights, I could have just put Roosters, honestly. The Titans look great in attack. Naf White is a cash train that keeps on rolling. He only played 50 minutes this week, as opposed to 57 the week before, but he's still got a minus 11 break even. He went up 72k. He's now 497k. He's projected to make another 56k. Just on that Angus Crichton note, his break even is now 78. He's 705k. I don't think he will score 78 against Souths. If he does, I don't think it'll be much more than that. And I think he probably bottoms out in price next week. So someone definitely to keep an eye on there. If we can get Angus Crichton in our squads, even in a game where the Roosters getting smacked 30-12, he's still scoring 78 points there. So definitely one to watch out for. He's definitely on my radar as somebody that's coming around to that period of bottoming out in price. Now, Jaden Campbell firms up as a great 5/8 option. He did score 63 with an intercept try here, which bailed him out a little bit, but it was a wet, sloppy game. His break-even is a 39, and it's the draw for me that really kind of opens up for the Titans now. They've shown they can attack. They now come into the Dolphins, Dragons, Raiders, Cowboys. They have the Bulldogs, which will be a tough matchup, and then that's followed by Newcastle, the Raiders, and then a bye in round 12. They got a pretty rough run after that. So I just think in this next stretch of how many games? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, he could really pump out some good scores. I can't see him going up too much in price, even though that he's on a 39 break even. He's already up in over 700k, so I can't see him shooting up to your 800s and making a heap of cash, but I think he's a solid points option at 5/8 over somebody maybe like a Cam Munster, who's been a bit of a plotter. Definitely one to watch out for there. Dolphins versus Broncos. Dolphins 12, Broncos 20. Top scorers Shibasaki are 116, Payne Haas 82, and Max Plath 76. A couple of notable scores: Corey Pakes with a 64, Jack Jajewski with a 59. Low lights: Hetherington with a 22, Jesse Arthurs with a 37, and Selwyn Cobbo with a 38. Super wet conditions here. Payne Haas was offloading way less in the wet, so for him to still come away with an 82 is monstrous. For me, I feel like you can be fine playing Shibasaki and Arthurs in the same team on good matchups. The Broncos have a really good run now. They've got Tigers, Roosters, Warriors. They do run into the Bulldogs, but that's at Suncorp. Then Penrith at Suncorp again. South, Dragons, and the bye in round 12. So much like the Titans, they come into a really good run of games right now. I actually played Corey Pakes for his 64, and the logic on that was with the Dolphins not being real expansive. I feel like there was going to be a lot of traffic through the middle. He was going to have a pretty low floor and make a lot of tackles. Thankfully, he scored a try as well, which is great. He did only play the 52 minutes. Obviously, he's got that role with Billy Walters that keeps shifting around every week, and he really only gets around that 50-minute mark. But if he's getting 64 and 50 minutes, and I'm stoked. He's still making cash. Will eventually obviously jump off him, but for now it was great. Picking the right weeks to play him, I feel like, is key. Just touching on Jesse Arthurs again. A lot of people are trading him this week for Jenkins. Although I can kind of understand it now that he's had that 37 in his rolling average. His break-even's still only 56. With that draw that we've touched on, Tigers, Roosters, Warriors in the next 3 games, his 3-round rolling average could be up in the 90s for all we know. 502k, I still feel like he's got more cash to make. For me, he's a hold. I can't really understand the trade. Surely you have other players there at centre wing that are better trades for Jenkins. Yeah, I know you want to make the cash. You free up like 300k straight away. But I feel like surely you've got blokes there that you can free up cash and also still keep the points of somebody like a Jesse Arthurs on that left edge, which is why I say that I think Shibasaki and Arthurs in your squad at the same time is not such a bad thing. Like if you're getting, say, 150, 160 points out of the two of them combined, even if one scores a 30, do you really care? Like, as long as you've got a piece of that, if you've got both pieces of that left side, I don't feel like it's too much of an issue. So, anyway, moving on. Dragons versus Storm. Dragons 14, Storm 8. Top scorers, Eli Katoa 77, Val Holmes a 71, Harry Grant with a 70. A couple of notable scores, Pappy with a 65, Cam Munster with a 57. Lowlights, Jack Howarth with a 29, Tuapolotu with a 32, Gutho with a 47. I mean, we didn't expect really much out of Gutho this week. He still made an absolute boatload of cash. But yeah, Dragons come away with the win, 14-8. They were real gutsy. Storm were very clunky in attack with no Jerome Hughes. Super wet conditions, which was a theme of this week. I will touch on Pappenhausen. 65. It was with a try. But key thing here is that he didn't have the goal kicking because of that dodgy ankle, which we touched on last week. He probably gets it back this week. He passed my eye test. Like, he looked good on the ground. He didn't seem to be, he didn't seem to be held down by that ankle injury while he was running. So for me, scoring 65 in a team that only scored 8 points and didn't get an opportunity to play a lot of expansive football, we know the Storm will have points in them. For me, it was a tick. I'm glad I waited a week just to get that eye test and make sure the ankle was all right. And I'm happy that, by waiting a week and him only scoring 65, I wasn't hurt too much if he turned up. So he didn't make a boatload of cash this week. So yeah, pretty happy there. Cowboys versus Raiders. Cowboys 30, Raiders 20. Top scorers, Jake Clifford 99, Tom Dearden a 97, and Joey Taps a 92. Couple of notable scores, Tamale with a 78, Drinkwater with a 76, Horsburgh with a 65. Low light KO weeks. He just really has done nothing so far this season. I'm sure he's out of most people's squads if he was in there to begin with, but he was somebody that I was looking forward to seeing this year and what he could produce in Supercoach, but he's really done nothing. Cowboys first of the win of the year. Unlike most of the games this week, they were stupidly hot, humid conditions up in North Queensland. They had drinks breaks at the end of each 20 minutes. Purdue and Tamale cash is starting to flow. Jackson Purdue, I touched on a couple of weeks ago. He was a hold. He is now 348k. He has a minus 10 break even. He made 50k this week. Tamale, similarly priced, 10k more expensive at 358k. He made 56k this week with a break even of 8. So, although I faded Tamale and I held on Jackson Purdue, both of their cash is starting to flow. They're really similarly priced. I feel like it's going to be a battle between these two all year as to who ends up making the most cash. I don't feel like you have to have both of them, but you definitely have to have one of them. For me, I'm holding on to Purdue just because I started with him and didn't start with Tamale. But yeah, good to see that they're both making cash for owners. Moving on to Sharks versus Bulldogs. Sharks 6, Bulldogs 20. Top scorers, Jacob Preston finally shows what he can do with a 122, why his name is Jacob Preston. Bronson Sherry with a 99, and then Cam McInnes with an 82. A couple of notable scores. Nico Hines with a 60, considering that the Sharks only scored 6 points. Not so bad. Connor Tracy with a 62. I note him here as relevant. I know he's not highly owned, but I mentioned it a few weeks ago. He is the only true fullback that is a CTW dual. So there's plenty of dual fullback CTWs, but he's the only fullback in the competition that is also like a true fullback that actually plays fullback every week that is available at CTW as well. So, it was more relevant towards the start of the season when we were looking at running 3, 4, maybe gun fullbacks, but with the rise of the front row, the necessity of jumping on all these fullbacks hasn't really been there. Don't get me wrong, by the end of the season, I think the script will finally come right and fullbacks will be the premium option. We've got the likes of Latrell returning this week, but Turbo going down. Walsh hasn't been fantastic. Drinkwater hasn't been fantastic. I mean, 62 from Connor Tracy in a game where they score 20, it's not really setting the world alight. So it's a little bit irrelevant, but something that I just thought I'd add in. A couple of low lights, Braden Trindle with a 15 and Will Kennedy with a 28. Bulldogs seem to be the real deal. They're 4 from 4 now. They're taking down the Sharks at Shark Park. It was a wet game. Wet hair Nico. Usually that's a win. And the Bulldogs found a way to win this. It was a really hard-fought physical game. Bulldogs kind of forced the Sharks to play Bulldogs football. And when the Bulldogs force you to play their style of play, they're always going to win. So, unfortunately, Kale Iro is no longer a pod territory player. He's suffered a hamstring injury this game and is expected back in round 9. Seagulls versus Eels. This really started what was a awful day for me. Seagulls 26, Eels 12, top scorers Hopper Wade with an 89, Offa Hangawe with an 82, and Kula and Paulo with a 67. Couple of notable scores, Ola Kawatu 62, Dill Brown with a 56, lowlights Iongi 35, DCE with a 43, and of course our friend Turbo with a 24. Was injured well before halftime, but eventually got hooked at halftime and never made his way back out onto the park. We'll wait and see as to when he returns, but just an absolute nightmare for owners, especially captainers like myself. It'd be very interesting to find out the percentage of super coaches who captained Nathan Cleary for his 2 into Turbo for his 24. Those people would be deleting the app right about now. But fortunately, I didn't captain Cleary for his 2, so I'm not in that territory. Again, wet game, and the Eels are still winless. Tigers versus Warriors. This was the last game of the round. I've already touched on leaving Adam Dewey in my squad and Metcalf on the pine, but won't get into that anymore. Tigers 24, Warriors 26. Top scorers Polly with a 96, May with a 92, Egan with an 86. Couple of notable scores, Seyfarth with an 81, Toa with a 65, and Metcalf with a 54. Low lights, Jerome Luai, 19, now suspended. I keep saying every week that you need to get him out of your squad. If he is still in there, delete the app. Taruva with the 36 was not so great either, but he's one of those volatile CTWs. It's expected from time to time. Dewey late out. May with an absolute monster effort, 152 metres, 48 tackles, 19 runs, 44 post-contact metres, and he played 80 minutes, just cementing his role in as being the second best front row forward in Supercoach behind Payne Haas. Metcalf, he had a try and he goal kicked. Warriors scored 26 points. He still only scored 54. His break even, although he made cash this week, his break even now rises to a pretty, I think it's like around 70 from memory. I don't have it jotted down here, but for me now he's an absolute sell. He's on the buy this week. I mean, you could potentially hold him for this week if you wanted a viable VC loop option. If you wanted to hold Metcalf for 1 week, you probably could, but I definitely would be selling him as soon as he comes back off the buy. I've seen all I need to see. I'm happy to jump off the train now. I feel like he's topped out in price, and I don't want to ride that train anymore. Last week's predictions, my God, this was horrible. We had Panthers 13 plus, they lost. Roosters 1-12, they lost. We had Broncos 13 plus, they won, but by 1-12. Storm 13 plus, they lost. Raiders 1-12, they lost. Sharks 13 plus, they lost. Seagulls 13 plus, yay, we got one right. And then Tigers 1-12, they lost. I am not banging on about this for too much longer. For the week, 2 from 8 games, 1 from 8 on the margins, which takes our season total to 18 from 30, and then 13 from 30 on games plus the margin. Moving on to round 5 previews, we have Raiders versus Sharks. Raiders changes, Morgan Smithies comes back, Josh Papali goes to 8, and Mooney comes out. Sharks changes, Hiroti and Hazelton in, Iro and Talakai out. My match prediction here is Sharks 1-12. I think they'll be hungry to bounce back. I don't think they'll blow the Raiders away and have them winning a tight one here. Panthers versus Cowboys. Big changes for the Panthers. Cleary comes back in. McLean, Eisenhuth in, and then To'o, Sorensen, and Tolau are out. Cowboys are unchanged. Prediction here, Panthers 13 plus. I think they'll be desperately hungry for revenge here, and I think the Cowboys might catch the flat end of the stick having to face the Panthers coming off 3 losses in a row. Rabbitohs versus Roosters. Latrell Mitchell is back. Lachlan Hubner is also back from suspension. Alex Johnston and Liam LeBlanc are out. Roosters changes. Connor Watson and Fogarty come in. Savala and Radley are out. Match prediction here might be a little bit biased, and I hate the Roosters, but Rabbitohs 13 plus. Eels versus Dragons. Dylan Walker makes his Eels debut. Moretti comes in. Lussick and Geimer are out. Dragons changes. Laurie is in, and Gula is out. Match prediction here, Dragons 1-12. Titans versus Dolphins. Jermaine Jolliffe comes back in. Mulaney makes his debut. Verrills and Isaac Fasua-Mawali are out. Dolphins changes. I have so much trouble saying his name. We stumbled on his name a couple of weeks ago when he was out in the first place. That bloke who plays for the Dolphins, Lemuelu. There we go. If we say it slow enough, we get to pronounce it. Tom Gilbert is out. Match prediction here, Titans 13 plus. Broncos versus Tigers. Hunt comes in. Ricky is out. Tigers changes. Dewey comes back in. Lauli'i is in. Luai is out, and Fatape is out. Broncos 13 plus. Seagulls versus Storm. Falal. I really apologise to any of the NRL players who watch SC Academy, which would total a whole 0. But anyway, I am completely stuffing up the pronunciations. I can't even pronunciations. Falalo is in, Sipley is in, Turbo and Alloway are out. Storm changes. Valepu is in, Seve is out. Hughes is amongst the reserves, so he might be a late inclusion. Match prediction here is Storm 1-12. Bulldogs versus Knights. Bulldogs changes. Moran comes in. Tupanua comes out. Kiraz is also lurking in the reserves there as he looks for a comeback. Knights changes. Thompson is in. Jones is out. Match prediction, Bulldogs 1-12. Coming on to the lowest break-evens, Jenkins at a -94 gets his first price rise this week as a must-have. Shibasaki after his 116 is a -50. Sam Rani, who's not playing, is a -32. Kant is a -31, but it's his second game this week, so he won't get a price change this week. Lockie Hubner is a -25. Haywood's a -22. Mooney, who's not playing this week, is a -17. Bradman Best with a -16, Derby with a -16, and Kickout, who is not playing this week, at a -12. On to the highest break-evens, Turbo, who's not playing this week, 169. Cleary with 142. Edwards and Hughes aren't playing, and they are a 134 and 127 respectively. Tedesco with a 124, Holmes 116, Little 110, Saab 109, Grant 103, and Daniel Tupou with a 100. My round 5 trades: out Turbo, out Howarth, out Metcalf. Obviously, the Turbo trade out speaks for itself. He's got to go. Jack Howarth, I'm not disappointed that I brought him in. I am disappointed in how he scored, but bringing him in allowed me to free up cash and have that loop and get rid of Campbell Graham, have that big loop when Ponga went nuts against the Dolphins. So I'm not too disappointed about it. I wanted him to make some more cash, but now he's got a reasonably high break even. He made me about 20k, I think, because he scored that 90 odd in round 1. So he comes out for me. Luke Metcalf, as I mentioned, I've seen all I need to see. Coming in, Ryan Pappenhausen comes in, Jenkins comes in for Howarth, and Jaden Campbell for me comes in for Luke Metcalf. I'm jumping on the back of that Titans draw. I think they could score a lot of points over these coming weeks, and obviously Jaden Campbell is going to be a big part of that. Leaves me with 37 trades. I'm down to 3 boosts after using my second one so far this year. And not only did I attack points this week, but I've still freed up a bunch of cash. I've got 216k now left in the kitty. Let's look at what the side looks like now. At hooker, I'm starting Sandon Smith this week and leaving Corey Pakes out of the squad as a non-playing reserve. Front row forward, Payne Haas. I've got him as a VC, but for me this week, the VC is irrelevant because I will be captaining Nathan Cleary on Friday night, and there is no point in me chucking the VC on Corey Horsburgh. I don't have anybody else in my squad that I can loop anyway, so I'm just basically straight seeing Nathan Cleary, which scares the absolute shit out of me. But we're going for it anyway. So, yeah, Payne Haas, who's a VC, Terrell May, and then Corey Horsburgh and Naf White. I'm playing them both on my interchange bench. 2 RFs, Tino. I'm playing Kant this week. I jumped the gun early last week. Got rid of Vi Malga, who, of course, finally scored up in the 40s this week. But I don't think a lot of people will have jumped the gun. I think they're going to be waiting and watching this week. And the fact that I've already got him in my squad, he's got huge base. And I hope to see it again this week. It's a bit of a balls to the wall play, a bit of a risky one. But I'm going to go for it. And then Thurmore, who I brought in last week, I'll also be playing. I won't be playing any of my other second rowers in Hetherington, Hubner, or Nicholson. Nicholson, yeah, he exploded in the first week, but although his floor seems to be around 50, it's pretty much all tackles. And I just hope that Kent has a little bit of that higher floor than Nicholson. Both big base guys, so we'll see how that goes. Halfback, as I mentioned, Nathan Cleary, who I've put the captaincy on. Nico Hines as my reserve. 5'8", Jaden Campbell comes straight into the starting lineup. I will not be playing Adam Dewey. Centre wingers, Ruben Garrick, Shibasaki, Marzu, and Arthurs. Jenkins, I will be playing this week. Same reason why I've captained Cleary. I think the Panthers will be very, very hungry for some revenge, and I think Cleary and Jenkins can cash in on the back of it. So I'm playing them for points this week. I'm leaving Purdue and Toya as non-playing reserves. Pappenhausen comes in at fullback. Iongi I will not be playing this week, and then my flex is Kalen Ponga. That's all for this week's episode. Thank you again for joining me. As always, if you've got questions, concerns, hot takes, comments, whatever, if you've got some dribble, whatever it may be, leave it in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Good luck for this week. Hopefully I will see green arrows again this week after copying my first red arrows for the year. But yeah, we will see you next week. All the best.